Councillor Selk?
Move to reconvene.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you, Gerry, for that good lunch, good supper. Thank you. All right, we had the budget presented to us. Now let's go to 7, recreation facility. Jeff, do you want to carry on the discussion?
Yeah, and whether there was still some discussion operating on the budget. I just wanted to mention on the rent facility, which is really related, a couple of things just so you're aware where we're at. Brandon and I are meeting tomorrow to discuss the costs and looking at this, and then we have a meeting also tomorrow afternoon with Reynolds Mirth to talk about how we can proceed with this project and satisfy the Northwest Trade Partnership. So when we're looking at a more grassroots approach, volunteer approach, how do we work through the procurement, both our internal policy and the Northwest Trade Partnership? So I've asked Reynolds Mirth, Sean Ward is his name. He does a lot of procurement contract law. So I've told him what we want to meet about, and at 3 o'clock tomorrow, Brandon and I are meeting with him to try and figure out how to navigate that appropriately and what we can do for a more grassroots approach. So we are trying to work through some of that stuff, and we'll know a little more tomorrow.
Would it be worth to have somebody like Gibb sit in with you on that or not?
To be honest, I think I'll just
Leave it
let
alone,
Brandon and I
okay.
have a go at it for now.
Okay.
Just because we're already familiar with what our obligations are under those policies, and so we'll work through that and then
Gotcha.
figure out how we can structure this going forward as far as starting, if we get to the procurement point, when we know how to do that. So that's really all I have to update as far as administratively. What's Councillor Selk and Gibb have met with Brandon on costs and outlaid that and what he's got. Brandon's going to try hard to verify things where he can, considering the volunteer piece of it. So it's unorthodox from a conventional project for sure. But we're going to try and get that confirmed as best we can, and then we'll bring any gaps probably back to you to say, hey, you know, we're reasonably comfortable here, we're not as comfortable here. Here's what we need to work on, and we'll keep in touch with Gibb and probably Councillor Selk on that too. So that's just a quick update administratively where we are with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor Selk?
So, Mayor, if I could, I'd like to make a recommendation,
Go ahead.
and I'd like to recommend that Councillor Brown get on the docket with West Wind School Division to have another conversation about a partnership.
Okay.
Might behoove us to have a councillor make that pitch.
Okay. Is Councillor okay with that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what it said.
I said keep eating, we'll be done in no time.
Okay, I agree with that.
Okay,
So,
essentially what the conversation is, Councillor Selk feels that it's important for a councillor to go pitch again the notion of partnership with the school division and to try to see if they're willing to budge or not.
Yes.
The only thing that we cannot offer them, Councillor Brown, is the magnitude of the project, because that's under review right now. So if you are talking on behalf of council, you need to remember that we have no motion on the table approving any of the financial.
Is good a commitment.
So except for $1 million, which is what we have committed, and non-funded at this point. So that is something you need to make sure that that message is correctly portrayed. We don't want to give them the impression that it has been approved as a full project financially, because we don't have a motion to such, and the budget has not been approved to reflect that. So that we are seeking a partnership, absolutely. That there are a need to have them support the project, that'll be a different story. It's up to them. Up to now, they are not budging, from what we understand. Councillor Selk?
I think Councillor Brown has a better idea of what to pitch in terms of the benefits to the West Wind School Division, so I think she's got a pretty clear path on what she would say.
So essentially, which way do you want to pitch it, if you don't mind us knowing?
No, so I think the most important thing to pitch to them is that this isn't a pickleball building. It's not a pickleball facility. We need to be crystal clear that it is a rec center. We need to be crystal clear on if, in fact, they're interested in partnering with this idea, that what we could have inside of it. Like what I met with Ken McMurray today, actually, and he's the principal of the high school, just to pick his brain on what his high school doesn't have, what they're lacking, what they would love to have, what programming. Because to me, that's the key into getting funding with West Wind, is they're not going to just say, oh, it's another gym, you bet. They need to know how it will help with their curriculum. That's hugely important to the West Wind School Division. And so I've done some homework on some of the programs that they used to have in West Wind School Division, but they no longer can run because they don't have gym space for it, with the grade 9s there, such and such. So that's kind of the direction I was thinking of pitching in regards to that. But of course, that it is seeking a partnership. I mean, yeah, that's the hope and the dream.
Okay, I mean, it is clear that I have partnered with Raymond, I have partnered with McGrath at the tune of $300,000 or so. We know that,
But I think the most important.
but I don't know that I would want to match it.
I think the most important part, though, is it's not. I feel like going to this meeting, we can't go at it as in we are entitled. We're entitled to have this. You've done it in McGrath, you've done it in Raymond, you've done it in Sterling, because that won't come across well. I feel like
Totally not.
we need to just come at this with, here's what we're looking at, this is the early stages, but we would love to be in partnership and work with you on this. That's essentially how I feel like it needs to go.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. Councillor Selk?
I think Councillor Brown will also slide in a subtle reminder that the high school has no green space, and the only green space they have is, oh, I know, ours.
And we still don't have a joint use agreement, and we still haven't been paid, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the same story. It hasn't changed. The tune has not changed.
Anyway, yes, I'm aware.
It's 9 years, the tune has not changed.
We
This
gotta get
is
a
why.
different record.
Mayor,
Okay,
could I ask
Yes.
something on while we're on the rec facility? I mentioned early in the evening, I was a week ago, the intention was to bring these different funding scenarios for the capital, but we were running into problems where every time we pick a scenario and then it would impact the budget, and then we couldn't give you good numbers on the scenarios. So I appreciate we're able to go through a number of things on operational. It's not perfect yet, but it's close-er. Is there anything, we made some changes, we cut some things back. Is there anything that you didn't agree with as a group? Because if you were okay with pretty much everything we just went through in operational, now I have better numbers to start putting the scenarios together for the capital. Now I feel a little more comfortable saying, yes, this is what's left in MSI. Yes, this is what's left in the reserve. Yes, this is what's here, and so on. So I just want to make sure that you're comfortable. I know you haven't had a lot of time to absorb it.
no.
And we've set up four meetings after this to work it through. That's fine. I just want to make sure we can start to build those now based on what we presented tonight.
Councillor Selk?
So, Jeff, our MSI funding for 2021 is good. We're solid there, right?
As far as we know, we expect around $800,000.
Right.
Correct.
It's anything beyond that is a mystery and a wrap up
Yes,
in a.
very much.
It's probably a very sick mystery,
Yeah, I'm very nervous
or
about
thick
it.
mystery.
Yeah,
Well, it's
quite
not
frankly.
Agatha Christie, but I mean, it's.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Jeff, I just want to ask you something. So you had projection for 2021, 2022, 2023. This year you say we're pretty close, 65,000 or so. next year is 10 times that. So help me again understand what you foresee regarding the amount of money that possibly we might not need, that is involved in that $600,000 deficit.
Sure. I don't have all $600,000 reconciled in my head, or I would have reconciled it on paper, so I'm not there yet.
Yeah, this is why I'm asking.
For example, to balance the previous capital budget, we had placed loan payments for both the clubhouse and the rec facility to get the other 50% in the budget roughly. We don't anticipate those are going to be required, and that's almost 200,000 that we can pull out.
Because?
Well, if we don't borrow for either facility, and I don't think it's the intention to do so, we were just trying to plunk the other funding
Okay.
in there. Now, as we get
All right.
more satisfied with, I'll use the rec facility, because it's a big piece of this, it's really complicated. As we get more comfortable with the proposed capital numbers, so I recognize that a week ago, we had the total project in at 2.6, for example.
Right.
Well, if it's 1.5, well, then that other funding, and if we know it's coming from fundraising through the Pickleball Society or the school division or whatever, all those things go away because we now have actual other funding.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just hypothetical other
Right,
funding
okay.
to balance it.
All right, I understand.
So that's a big piece that can go away, right?
Okay.
I understand.
After
Because
that-
it's a little scary.
Yeah, it is, and after that, it gets a little more gray, but it's not unusual for us to start each year
Yeah, with
operational
big deficit,
at,
yeah.
a few $100,000. That's not unusual,
Right.
and we will, stop, Joe. I'm not saying, whoever sings that song.
We were at 600,000 last year when we
Yeah.
started.
Yeah, so we get there. Now, sometimes we're kicking things down the road a little bit, we're deferring, we're doing
Yeah.
some things, and you can't do that forever. But this year, I think what's helping us balance, and I'm conflicted in some way, and I'm okay in other ways, we are using reserves heavier this year. So, I don't say it appropriately, we're just using the reserves in them. If we didn't have those, we wouldn't be having, I mean, how in the world would we fund the 1.1 million on the sewer plant? Aside from debenture. Right.
Right.
And now, next year, I got another loan payment on $1 million.
Right.
So that
And that-
exacerbates the problem
yeah.
next year, right?
And that's
So-
the loan payment, you're
So
right.
thank heavens, we're using them appropriately. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but that's how we're using a lot of them to balance this year.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so,
Mayor,
yes.
did Councillor Selk make that motion?
Yeah,
No.
I believe there is a motion.
Yeah, it's-
Sorry.
Recommendation that
Yeah,
Recommendation,
Councillor Brown meet with the Westman School Division Board regarding partnering for the rec facility.
okay. Comment, question? All in favor? Thank you. Okay.
yeah. So next,
Do your magic.
more capital.
Okay, thank you.
Get your notes queued up, Councillor Selk. I know you're anxious.
All right, so on the 7B,
Oh, one other thing, I'm so
Oh.
sorry. Next week's probably most appropriate if you want to report on Parks and Rec at that time, when we talk the capital priorities.
If I want to talk
Report
about.
on that, your committee meeting.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so we can do that
perfect.
next week is what I
Yep.
was getting at. Yes.
Sounds good.
yeah, if you can give us a report of what's
Love it.
happening. Okay, lead testing program is an interesting program. We were asked by the province to test at least 40 households. We tested 41. There were 2 that seemed to be an aberration. The test was redone and found to be within the proper norms. So at this time, the question is, does council feel that they want more property tested, or are we satisfied that due diligence has been done and we let Curtis know that diligence has been done, and thank you very much for the service.
I would suggest that we don't need to do any more. If Alberta Environment and Parks are fine, they're okay. And there was only two. One of them was
Yeah.
mine. And I'm fine with it now.
All right.
I think we just
So,
move forward and
so can you make a recommendation oh, are you okay? Fine, thank you. Let's move.
This is lead testing in the water and not bullets in your safe or anything.
All right. Under 7C, the food patrol, I think it has been a successful initiative. Councillor Selk, you done it. Councillor Brown, you done it, and I done it. And it was very interesting. Anybody else?
I was scheduled, but it was blowing and raining, so I didn't, just we canceled that.
Okay, all right. So I know that Councillor Drew is scheduled to do it in a couple of weeks, something like that. Okay,
Mayor, if I might, the reason I put that on the agenda is I'd had
I was the one.
you and
Yeah.
maybe, I forget now, maybe you, but just mentioned some things that you talked about or noticed, and I didn't know if you wanted to have a general discussion about those observations
Right.
here.
So there were certain things that we explored as we were talking, and I think maybe all of us explored pretty well the same thing. So, Councillor Selk, do you want to maybe talk about it, or something that...
Well, it was interesting and informative and a little depressing all at the same time. So I think the common theme that I heard was we need a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Need a place to go because we're kicked out of the shelter at 9
Yeah.
o'clock and told not to come back until 6 o'clock.
Right.
So they have no place to go, and they go wherever they can to get out of the elements, which is difficult.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That is something that was spoken of also. Councillor Brown, same thing. Okay, and when I went with the Sergeant Wright and we were, there was our peace officer was there, and we had another young man with us.
You had Luke Keeper with you.
Lucas, yes, that's right, Luke. Anyways, what the discussion was about is we had one time spoken of the possibility to open the Randy Jensen building next to the washette that is there, the laundromat. And could we, without calling it a friendship center, make it a drop-in center? And I said to our Sergeant Wright, in order to do that, we need to have all the parties together. The FCSS group, the somebody from the reserve, different maybe people from the town, to be able to come up with some idea. He seemed to have a fair amount of interesting ideas. And I thought maybe it would be worthwhile, if you are interested at council, to revisit that idea. Would you support that?
Absolutely. But I'd also like to suggest, Mayor, that this is a conversation that needs to include our Member of Parliament.
Yes.
And there may be a corporate sponsor who may want to enter into the equation, who might be interested in helping us out there.
Right. And so, speaking of that, that's the idea that he had regarding the financing of that possibility. So I think we need to kind of strike a little bit of a committee there to be able to explore that. Of course, the election on a blood tribe is not there, so it's difficult to get somebody from the reserve to sit with us and to be able to guide us and help us. But I think it might still be worthwhile starting to look at possibilities. So would you make a recommendation, Councillor Selk, to try to move this item along?
Sure. Only have a question, Mayor.
Go ahead, please.
In our planning session, we said we were going to dedicate an entire council meeting to this once we got sort of beyond
The election and all that, yeah.
So is that something that we wanna, that's the time to consider talking about this?
Could be.
And then we could quite possibly have our member of parliament.
Could try hard. Because we're going to need support at many different levels. We're going to need support at the federal, at the provincial, and regionally possibly, I don't know.
So you have a resolution on the books to host that meeting.
Right.
So we don't need to duplicate that. It's just been a timing thing
Right.
up to this point. Now, on the proposed agenda I gave you, it did include Mr. Fox from Social Development,
Right.
who oversees FCSS as well. So I think we don't know who the elected players will be, but administratively, I think we know who they
Okay.
should be. So we don't need to be redundant. It's certainly on our forefront. We just, that election's been, and we just haven't known the date.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to make a recommendation. It's already there. It's just, we need to get all the players.
Bring it together, yeah. Okay, thank you. Maybe you can kind of give us a sense of the parties we may want to bring together.
Yeah, I can bring that draft agenda back. I think we looked at it in
Right.
the planning session, I believe, I think is where it was. So I'll bring that back and then we can have a look at
And
that too.
could you maybe contact Sergeant Wright, and try to see if there are some specific people that you feel that meeting could benefit from?
Okay.
Thanks.
There's still a provincial ministry for Indigenous Affairs.
Yeah, there is. We never hear nothing from it, but
Crickets.
Before we go into our correspondence here, I have a question. I should have brought it up at the beginning, because there's been a lot of people asking, what's happening with, we know that the community's awareness night not happening,
Oh.
right? Okay, what's happening with Remembrance Day? Because people are wondering what's going on with Remembrance Day
Okay,
in town here.
okay. So as far as we know,
I can tell you precisely.
go ahead.
So it's on our site, it's on the Facebook page.
That's what I was
Legion's
going to
page,
say.
And everybody's been sharing it. So we've encouraged people to come pay respects at the cenotaph through the week of Remembrance Day.
Okay.
To avoid any large crowds. There will be no formal programming put on by the town.
Okay,
And the Legion is requesting that everyone watch the presentation from Ottawa.
okay.
And that's
And
that.
they're actually having one, that was my next
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, we're trying to get the link so that we can show it on our site and social media for that you can click through there to get to
Okay.
it. But we haven't, I know Shem's looking, they have not published the
Hasn't been out there.
link for the presentation yet, but we are watching for it.
Okay.
Okay, so fair enough. Good question. Thank you, Councillor, because I have been asked that too. I always tell them, go to the website, the
Yeah.
town
Is that in the
website.
paper this week? Do we know?
I think it might
I think it might be in the
He's got it
paper
on marquee.
Thursday.
Right.
Yeah, and it's on our marquee now too.
Okay, so there's different pieces of correspondence on the 9.
Yeah.
So one is the assessment model update from AUMA. Jeff, is regarding the assessment, the review of the assessment.
The assessment modeling, and
Right.
actually what I did like in this letter is they put out the impact to the respective municipalities.
We don't show up anywhere
So-
because it has zero impact.
No, because it was negligible for us.
Yeah.
So that's good. I don't mean to minimize all of the discussion that's been happening provincially on this, but it doesn't appear to be having the effect that was feared. I mean, you see some 1 and 2, you see a 4% impact on one community, but other than that, it's pretty minor.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a larger drop than that, but it's not,
Yeah.
which is good.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I appreciated that.
Okay, 9B, there is another AUMA quarterly report for your information. Under 9, there is the AAPG update. So it has to do with the police governance model.
They're just, what she's doing, I think, is describing what the mandate of that
Yeah.
interim committee is set.
And
is to set up a governance model for the permanent board.
yeah,
when it's structured.
and they're explaining who
Right.
sits on it. Okay, and Tanya is,
Yes.
Thorn is sitting on it and does an excellent job reporting every time. You can thank her.
Can I ask a
From
quick question,
County.
Councillor Bengry? Is this the committee that you're on?
Yes.
And have you met?
We meet virtually
Okay,
about once a month.
okay,
Okay?
thank you.
All right, then there is under 9D, Sergeant Bob Wright, the MOU that has to do with the peace officer and the RCMP, the contractual obligation between the two. Well, kind of.
Question?
9, yeah, go ahead.
Jeff, has the county used our peace officer
Yep.
this summer for,
Yeah, we've had a couple of different instances.
Load
with
limits
Cardston. Yep.
okay.
Okay.
It's not too much, it hasn't much at all, but there's been a couple times.
9E, Minister Tracy Allard, you already referred to that letter, which is definitely something
Very direct.
direct and sobering. And that is,
Give that letter, it bothers me.
well, you shouldn't be bothered. That's a reality that we knew was coming.
Yeah,
She only verbalized a reality that was spoken of
yeah.
since the price of oil has dipped into oblivion. We depend on that, right?
Except at the pump.
Except at the pump. How true. I like that. It's a good poem. Okay. Go ahead.
Mayor, when I read that letter and I start thinking between the lines, which I shouldn't do, I think this is only a tip of the iceberg that's gonna happen. You know, considering, finances of the provincial and the federal budgets.
Well, Councillor Bengry, we mandated to budget, to balance our budget. They are mandated to keep on the tax flowing. So,
Until they get those pipelines built and stuff flowing, there's going to be a shortage of funding. And they are well on their way on those pipelines.
Way
Well, the
way
election
election's
might
going
tell us
right now in
something.
the United States could stop them.
Yeah.
okay, let's not depress ourselves, guys. Okay. Can we go in closed chambers, please?
I move to go in closed session.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you very much to the media. As always, you do a great job.